Right, so as people head off to vote in the 3 by-elections happening in different corners of the country today, I'll be covering all of that once the results are in, of course. It hasn't slowed down Labour's drive to make sure they only have the right sort of candidates in place wherever contests are due to be held. Their argument continuing to be, we need the best. We need candidates who won't embarrass us. And by us, we mean Starmerite sorts. We basically need to keep purging the left until we only have a bunch of little Starmer the Kid Starver drones who will bow and scrape and do as they're told, serving the smarmy exalted leader, not the constituents, nor the country, the little swines. So set Starmer and his selected minions aside for a moment. How do you decide who is a high-quality candidate? What are the criteria? Long membership, experience in politics at a lower level, perhaps getting involved in the CLP as an officer, perhaps having gone through one of Labour's own Be a Candidate schemes, training in leadership, that kind of thing. You'd imagine that's how it ought to be done, isn't it? So let's take the latest Labour selection twist, because for all of the long list rigging that we've seen around the country, Starmer's latest diktat is right up there with turning down Jamie Driscoll as a Metro Mayor candidate, despite him being a current Metro Mayor. It's a parliamentary seat we're looking at once more. He's rigging the selections as who can stand for Labour there, and the one in question is Wolverhampton West, where the long list has been published in the last couple of days and failing to make the grade, despite the backing of no fewer than 7 trade unions and affiliates, is Mish Rahman. Now, if you don't know who Mish Rahman is, he's pretty high up in the Labour Party. He literally sits on Labour's National Executive Committee. Yes, a man elected to Labour's highest ruling body isn't apparently good enough to be a parliamentary candidate. He's in a position above most Labour MPs as far as Labour infrastructure goes, but he can't actually be one of them because apparently he isn't good enough. Literally, people he sits with on the NEC, people he makes decisions with and debates with, will have voted him down. Indeed, he'll have sat on panels himself, overseeing potential candidates doing just that. Rahman is, of course, one of the last remaining lefties on that body, the NEC, and the panel that voted him down, well, they probably weren't. Mish has literally sat on panels himself to assess the suitability of Labour candidates, reinforcing the blatant factional idiocy behind this. But such is the factionalism, not just in the wider Labour Party itself, under Sir Kid Starver's rule, but even on its most senior ruling body, the splits are gaping wide. His statement, though, it is damning. He said, I have been informed by the Labour Party that I have not made the long list in the Wolverhampton West constituency selection, despite gaining strong support and the backing of 7 trade unions and affiliates. This is not a shock. It is what I and my team expected. None of my fellow Bernie Grant Leadership Programme alumni have been selected. We were told the party would support us towards leadership positions as black and minority ethnic activists, yet after this long listing process, nothing has changed. As a 2-term, currently elected member of Labour's NEC, I have chaired panels for long listing in other parliamentary selections. I am therefore allowed to long list candidates, but not be long listed myself. I was blocked for how I voted on the NEC in relation to the composition of party disciplinary structures following the EHRC report. This was a position shared by an array of NEC members, including trade union representatives. Being blocked for casting a vote in a democratic process should be a serious concern for all of us in the Labour Party. That level of trade union and affiliate support, even a fraction of that incidentally, should have seen him automatically long-listed under Labour Party rules. But they break them when they feel like it, this leadership, to ensure they don't get people in Parliament that they just blatantly don't want. We know the party disciplinary processes following the EHRC report have been abused and bent to the will of those who would weaponise such issues, and indeed, that is what Rahman implies has been done to him. But he also makes note of the fact that as a Bernie Grant Leadership Programme alumni, or alum, he, like all the others who have applied for a leadership position, literally the point of that programme, named after pioneering black Labour MP Bernie Grant, to help other members of BAME communities advance within the Labour movement, have all been turned down as candidates. Rahman is actually the 3rd to be turned down now, again, reinforcing the belief amongst those who pay attention to such things that for all of Starmer's bleating about cracking down on racism, if it isn't anti-Semitic racism, then it doesn't seem to matter as much. I've pointed out time after time that the fact the Labour Party's own complaints page on its own website has a bespoke complaints page for anti-Semitism, yet not for any other form of racism, and this is still the case. Diversity in the Labour Party only goes as far as doing as we tell you and saying what you're told to say. Most perversely, Starmer recently made a gushing speech about the second cohort of the Bernie Grant leadership programme getting launched. But unless they're 100% wedded to his Tory-like vision for Britain, what hope have they got of ever being a candidate somewhere? Hope does exist, though. And I'm not necessarily talking about the Green Party here either, which regular viewers will know I'm a member of, but actually the success of people who have walked away from Starmer's Labour to stand alone on their own 2 feet and in their own rights, and have beaten him as a result of that, because it's not as if people aren't aware of the stunts that Starmer and co have been pulling. Jamie Driscoll, I'll come back to in the North East Metro Mayor contest. He's achieved a lot of things as the North of Tyne Metro Mayor. Local people know it, and the support for him now running as an independent, having had to quit Labour in order to do so, shows he was absolutely right to do so, because people clearly do want him, to the extent that in 2 days he's amassed more than £100,000 in campaign funding, of a £150,000 total target, whose original aim was to run if he managed to get £25,000 by the end of August. But the rate he's going, he'll be fully funded by the time the week is out, which should terrify Starmerites, that this guy has got this much popularity going for him, and especially since he is just being funded by ordinary working class people, a fiver here and a tenner there. Another example was a by-election in Labour stronghold Newham, where the victim of a smear and spying campaign, which he detailed in the excellent Al Jazeera Labour Files documentaries, which you may know this chap from if you've seen them, Mehmood Mirza became the first independent to take a seat there. Take the seat he was going for there in Newham, Berlin. Mirza was a Labour member himself, of course. Why else would Labour have done all this to him otherwise? But he left when Starmer decided to suspend both Newham constituencies for blatantly factional reasons. But the final straw for Mirza personally was that he had made it onto the ballot for the Labour National Executive Committee elections, before finding himself spuriously suspended, thus barring him from getting elected, because he's a rotten lefty. He went on to win that Newham council seat. The Labour candidate he ended up beating, no less than the head of events and visits for Keir Starmer himself, who actually works out of the opposition leader's own office. So not just knocked down, but that's putting the boot in a bit too. Starmer, for as much as his cheerleaders and hangers-on gloat about purging left-wing members, they aren't going away. Mish Rahman remains on the NEC. I hope he makes himself as awkward as possible. Others like Driscoll and Mirza are standing against Labour now, having been left with no choice if they are to offer an alternative to voters and the left-wing vision that Corbyn enthused and inspired people by, that they wish to carry on. And when that alternative is presented as Mirza has shown, people can and will take it. People are fed up with more of the same. They recognise that Starmer is just another Tory, promising more Tory policy, so another option on the ballot just keeps becoming more and more attractive as a result. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel if you did. New content posted daily. Meanwhile, here's another video recommendation for you, where Starmer heavily ramped up deselection of candidates he didn't want ahead of the recent local elections. You can only really expect this to continue going forwards. A party of Tory drones is all Labour will be before long. We need more Rahmans, Driscolls and Mirzas to ensure this country doesn't continue to head down the tubes. And I'll hopefully see you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.